I would like to ask, like, in your opinion, how can we motivate the youth? Because it's, in a sense, discouraging or like saddened that a lot of youth, when you speak, so you have your circle of very active, very motivated people, but when you just go a little bit broader, you kind of see a different picture of people, of youth who basically have no interest in anything. So in a sense, like in this circle of people who are interested in a lot of things and who would like to change something, who would like to see a better future or whatever, it's relatively small compared to all the other people who live. So how do you think, in your opinion, maybe from your experience, how can young people, how could they be motivated to bring some change? Because for instance, I've spoken to people in Portugal and Spain, and like a lot of people, and like talking about corruption, a lot of people, they just see like, oh, corruption, it's inevitable, it's natural, it's like in our blood, so we can't do anything, and they just do not join any movement, they do not see any light in the future, that how this could be changed. So they just like go on with the flow.
As somebody farthest, I think the person farthest away from youth in this panel, I think I should start, and then you can get to the more relevant answers. First of all, I mean, I don't want to prejudice anybody's involvement in this group and what's been happening in Ireland this week, but I mean, as an old fogey in my approaching 50, I can't speak highly enough of the enthusiasm in the youth in Ireland. I mean, what has been happening here in the last 3 weeks just blows away all that patronising, contemptuous talk from people of my generation about how the youth don't care and how the youth don't understand politics. I think they understand it very well, and they wrought an incredible change. So the first thing I think is that, there's a narrative among people with beards like mine, they're not quite as grey as mine, that somehow the 60s were the period where everything was changed and where the heroes and idealism was. I find my students to be much more realistic, much more honest with themselves about what they're prepared to sacrifice and they're prepared to do. So I would say there's a well of interest there if people see it as worthwhile. The second issue, I suppose, regards culture, and I think Ireland has a lot to offer in this respect. I mean, we are known as, if you like, the Latins of the North, with all those corrupt stereotypes that are attached to Latins, and we're even a pig these days in terms of, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain, and how apparently we're much more genetically corrupt than lots of other people. So I think Ireland does have a role to play in terms of the period that John talked of, where Ireland nearly went down a very corrupt rabbit hole, and whereby political action we lifted ourselves out of. That kind of, I think we have a special gift. I mean, this chapter of the organisation will have a special gift to bring in terms of looking at that relationship between identity politics, nationalism, colonialism, in a way that I think other members of the chapter might find very useful in dealing with countries that aren't as successful as maybe some of the Nordic, Scandinavian, Germanic countries in dealing with corruption. I think I've said as much as I can possibly risk saying about youth, so.
Well, I maybe the worst person to ask, because I haven't been engaging youth as much as I would have liked, in large part because I've found myself focusing on some of the technicalities of corruption and researching, developing tools, working with people of different age cohorts very often. And I mean, a lot of my colleagues, we have large chapters in Bangladesh who engage through concerts and cultural events. We get 30,000 people out in the street in Cambodia to fight against corruption. It has been done elsewhere, just hasn't been done here yet. I think one of the problems or one of the challenges you face here in Ireland is in convincing people that corruption is big enough a problem for them to worry about and to be motivated enough to do something about. And the second challenge she then faces is providing them with an opportunity to engage. And that's not easy. You have to be innovative. You need to be able to communicate the relevance of this campaign to ordinary people, and particularly to young people who might not see corruption as a big problem. And that has been a challenge in everywhere we've worked at Transparency International. It's been a big problem for us, particularly in Western Europe and North America. We have relatively small chapters compared to our chapters in Bangladesh, where we have 300 staff. You know, Colombia, Kenya, big chapters, and we're bigger than Amnesty International. So we have a problem here in large part because people don't see it as relevant. And I disagree to some extent, Brendan, as far as I think corruption, we did go down that hole, and I think we're still stuck in a hole. I think Charles High, contrasted to what Vincent Brown might say, did enormous damage to political culture in this country. You point to the way in which our civil service was manipulated and to a large degree disempowered by politicians, even the revenue commissioners, Charles High. I think it's going to take years for that culture to be cleansed of the damage done by people like High, and for that negative social capital to be addressed. It's still manifesting itself right now. We still have people who are. You can look at the work of Task, for example, who mapped Golden Circle. They produced a report not too long ago on the links between business and government, and looked at those social networks as well. And there's an awful lot to be done. It won't always be described as corruption, however, and you will meet a lot of people who say, well, this is going a little bit too far to call it corruption or to call those people corrupt. And you will find yourself in the forecourts facing a defamation action if you brand people as corrupt, unless there's a de jure court finding against them. So you need to find a language, the right language, to communicate this problem to people and make them see the relevance of this problem to their daily lives.
I think what you said there was quite interesting, because I think it is going to be the way it is. In some regions, like in Bangladesh or Indonesia, we already have massive growth, and it's already, they're reaching into universities and people are flocking to it. And the majority of our likes and our interactions on social media is from them regions. So I mean, Edgar's is probably going to have one of the toughest jobs in trying to get people in Western Europe and North America moving on these kind of things. Because you were saying corruption essentially cost 30 billion to the Irish economy in one way or another through the bank bailout and the corruption involved in that. And people, it was a point we kind of discussed, because our history is actually came from a student festival. And one of the points that was raised that it was, are people willing to accept a certain degree of corruption if there is, a level of development? At what rate is it that people start going, our economic problems are because of corruption and not because of, we're not producing enough, we're not working hard enough, or, all of these narratives. So it is going to be quite an interesting thing for Edgar's